Good afternoon. On behalf of all of us at Pur-Logic Solutions, I want to thank you for joining us today as part of our Get More from Your Sage software webinar series. We are recording this session, so for all of us who are able to attend and for those who are registered but were unable to make it, we will be sending out the recording. I'm going to send it over now to Peter from North 49.
Thank you, Angela, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. My screen's still showing, Angela?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good stuff. So we're going to talk about the North 49 customer portal today. It's something that's been available from North 49 for quite some time. It's been a component of our full e-commerce platform called Webtelligence for many years, probably 15 plus years. But because of the way the customer portal communicates, it's a live read of data and feed of data into Sage 300. We were able to disconnect that and offer it as a separate standalone product. And that's what we're going to talk about today. If your requirements sort of extend beyond just basic customer portal capabilities, we'd be happy to talk to you about the e-commerce platform. But for today, we will focus on the customer portal. So not surprisingly, there's been a fairly big uptick in people's interest in getting online in one way or another, and primarily to service customers. And very early on in the pandemic, we started to get a lot of requests from companies to help them get online and get online fast. Well, again, we've always had our e-commerce platform that's out there, so getting online was not an issue for us. The fast part was where the challenge came in, because building a whole web store takes a while, right? It takes a couple of months to get something up and live. But the customer portal, we can bring that live in a matter of probably a couple of hours. So it's very easy to do. There's little to no overhead on your side. And so this statement here that you're seeing from BDC, which is Business Development Canada, is proven to be fairly true. And this he made this statement very early on in the pandemic, and it's just proved itself out as time went on. People really wanted to get online and quickly, and customers are now coming to expect that. And it's in large part due to the way we deal with our personal lives and the things that we get to interact with in our personal lives, like dealing on Amazon, for instance. You get access to anything you want when you want it. You don't have to call somebody unless you really need to. And in fact, that might be more challenging than not. So people want to do this for themselves, and they want to do it when they want to do it, not when the business is open for them to deal with, right? And so it's become an expectation on our customers' behalf that they have these capabilities, and they will give their business to the merchants or the vendors, to the companies that provide that service for them. And there's significant benefits for yourselves as the merchants as well, because it does reduce your administrative overhead for a lot of those low value customer interactions, like, can you resend my invoice? How much do I owe you? Can I make a payment? All this stuff can now be done at the customer speed when they want, online, any time of the day or night, and on any device. And the beauty of it is there's a lot of savings for you in both time and money by allowing them to do that. So it can start in its most simple form, and this is what the customer portal provides, with a simple click to pay. And this is something you would provide to your customers on their invoice document as it gets sent out, or perhaps in the body of the email as it gets sent out. And I'll show you a sample of this. And it just lets them pay that document, and that's it. Simple. Or you go for what the full service portal provides, and that's the ability for them to pay multiple documents, look up any document that sits inside of Sage on their behalf, make payments online, check order statuses, even place orders online. All that stuff is potentially available within the full customer portal. And that quick order entry form I spoke about, no, I don't want to overcharacterize this as a web store, because it really doesn't go quite that far. And it's really intended to be a B2B or a business to business or a wholesale thing, because clearly you need to have a customer AR account in order to deal with this. And again, I should state this just so it's clear, the portal itself has no data. We do not upload any of your data into our platform. We read it live out of Sage. And so the connectivity is live between Sage 300 and the portal. We have a simple component we call Connect. It sits there and waits for us to ask it a question from the web, in which case it will return the answer and serve that up onto that page on the customer portal. And I'll say this now, and I'll probably say it again later, you do require a Sage user license for that communication to take place. So just bear that in mind. So the thing about this is, I'll show you what the portal looks like from the customer perspective, and I'll show you the back end, which is what you can control from the merchant standpoint. And there's a lot of stuff you can control in the back end, but typically you don't have to go in there hardly ever. It's one of those things where once you get it set up, it just does what it does, and you don't have to really interact with it in any way. Just make sure that that connect component is running and everything's good. We will connect into Sage. We will do what we need to do automatically, and you don't have to mess with it. But you have these capabilities to turn things on and off and to check on payments and those kind of things within the back end. And I'll show you that as well. But really, I don't want to create the impression like you have to go in here and administer this thing all the time. Honestly, once it's going, you don't really have to mess with it at all. So with that, let me pop into the actual application itself and show you what it looks like. So bear with me while I find it. That's not the one I want. It's this guy here. So this is connected to a instance of Sage 300 that is hosted on Azure. And it doesn't matter where your Sage 300 is. It could be on premise in your own on your own servers. It could be hosted in some private cloud, or it can be on the Sage Azure platform. We work in all of those areas. Let me just point out a few things on this landing page. And this is the landing page that most customers are going to get. Oh, sorry, before I do that, let me show you that click to pay I spoke about. So what I've done here is I've just mocked up what might be, I don't know, a statement or an invoice or something you send to your customer. And you could do this inside of the invoice document that you send out of Sage, or you could put it inside of the email message that goes out with that invoice. And really all we're doing here is we're embedding a link in that document that gives them the ability to pay that document, and that's it. And you can see what the URL, I guess, here is with the other components that tell us where to go. It's the customer number, the document number. And when the customer clicks on that, really what it does is it takes them to a portal page very similar to the one you just saw there, and it will allow them to pay that document and that document only. Notice we filled in everything we know about that document. Depending upon who your payment processor is, and we are agnostic, you can deal with anybody that you would normally deal with. And based upon what your account is set up for, the customer can pay by credit card or they can pay by ACH. And incidentally, you can control this as well to a great extent. And the first thing we do here is we go back into Sage and we check, is that invoice still available to be paid? And if so, we will allow them to pay that. And when they hit that pay invoice, what happens is, excuse me, they'll be presented with the payment screen. Now, notice we've changed here. Now we've gone to in this case, we're hooked up to Paya and the Sage Exchange. We've now taken the customer to that URL and to the payment gateway. And the reason we do this is so that neither us nor you by extension has any PCI compliance issues here. The gateway is taking this information, not us. The only thing that we ever get is either the post back from that payment, or in the instance where we want to store a card token, we get that token, which we are allowed to store to stay on the right side of PCI compliance. And I'll show you that a little bit later. So when they hit that, and once they enter their card details, they hit that Pay Now button, we go out to the gateway, we get that post back, and we append that directly into a Sage AR receipt batch so that you don't have to do anything. There's no download, there's no upload. You don't have to go out to the virtual terminal to collect that payment. It's automatically put into Sage. All you have to do is post it, and it's all reconciled. So simple. You've saved a ton of work there by taking these customer payments. So that's the click to pay. And the only thing they can do is pay that document. And incidentally, if that document was no longer available to be paid, we would pop a message saying, I'm sorry, that document is no longer available to be paid. So let's look at what the full portal looks like. So first of all, we have both English and French. And if you need another language, let us know. We're happy to take care of that and put in a new language there. It's fairly simple for us to do. Customers can change the language anytime they want. You notice all the labels and things change, but this didn't, because that is within your control. You enter that information with the admin side, and I'll show you that once I get through the customer facing side. This you control, this you control. This is your logo and any messaging you want to put on here. So there's a fair bit of real estate up here, and really this is just an image file. You can put anything in there that you like. Typically, it's going to be your logo and some messaging like we've got here. Customers can register in a number of different ways. So the first way, which means more work for you, is that you will ask them to send you an email and ask to be registered, and then you would have to set them up in the back end. Other way that can happen is you can allow customers to self-register. and they will fill out this form. They'll need to know their account number, their AR account number, and then they can fill this in. And one option is then you can then authorize them for access, or number two, if they answer a question correctly, and there's, I think, one of 5 different questions that we can ask, and I'll show you those in the back end. If they answer that question correctly, you can grant them immediate access to the portal. And in the process of doing that, you have the option of sending an email to the email address that is on the AR customer account and letting them know so-and-so has just registered for access to the portal. Please tell us if this is not okay. And then you have the ability to turn them off if that wasn't okay. So the least work method is let them self-register and authorize them. Once they've answered that question correctly, they get access immediately. Otherwise, you can authorize them once they filled this in. So that's the 3 ways folks can register. And also they can come straight to here. If they don't want to log in, they can just click that pay invoice button. They're going to get that similar screen up there. They enter their customer number, they enter their document number, and away they go. But let's pop into the.
Thank you.
Sorry, was there a question? No, okay. Let's pop into the full portal as a customer. Let's have a look at what customers can have a look at. So the first thing potentially that can happen is you can display a message for that specific customer. So I'm Dan Penn, I've logged in, it's customer number 1600, and this message is right here inside of Sage 300 in the AR customer record under, let me find out 1600, under the comments tab. There's a comment here typed called web, and here's that comment, right? This is what we're seeing on the screen in the customer portal. And that's a one-on-one communication between you and that customer. And when the customer sees that and they click OK, what happens in the back end is, let me just navigate away and then back to this guy again. We've changed it to web acknowledge. So now we know that Dan has seen that message. And so that's a bit of an example of our live read and feed of data back and forth into Sage 300. It's instantaneous. So that just demonstrate that. So maybe I don't have to keep popping back and forth in here when I do other things, but just understand that we are reading and feeding data live into Sage 300. The second potential message that someone could see is controlled within the portal backend itself. And this is a broadcast to every customer. And you can send this message out to everybody, and it has a date range on it, and you can reset it and all that kind of stuff. And I'll give you a quick look at that in the back end when we set it as well. And again, when they click OK, flags it for them. I've seen it, don't have to show it again for that particular customer. These are all the functions or icons that a customer could see, and this is dependent upon what you subscribe to, and there's 3 different levels of subscription, and we'll talk about that sort of toward the end, or what you turn on and off in the back end as well. And these are just checkboxes. You can display this icon or that icon or not at your discretion. Let's just pop into each of these and have a quick look at what they show. The first one, the account activity, is really just summary level information about the account. You know, the last few documents, the last few payments, statement, that kind of stuff, right? Just general information, summary information about the account. Now, from this point, I can navigate either through these menus, or I can go back to the icon-driven view and have a look that way. That's really up to the customer. The view transactions does pretty much what you would expect it to do. It allows you to look at all of the documents that sit inside of that customer's AR account, and you can show them all or only ones that have a balance on them. The customer can filter these down by a specific document type, or you, as the merchant, can turn these on and off as well in the back end. So they just don't show up here for the customer to look at. So if you don't charge interest, for instance, just turn it off, doesn't show up. But again, this is a live read of that data in Sage 300. So whatever is in there, we can display on this screen for as much history as you've got for any document that's in here. And if the customer wants to drill down and just see invoices, he can do that. And when they're highlighted like this, that means they can drill into them and they can see the details. Now, this was an AR summary invoice. So all we can show is the data that appears on that record. So it's fairly straightforward. This is an AR detailed invoice. So it's going to show me some line item detail from accounts receivable. And then finally, these are OE documents. So if you've got order entry and you're producing your invoices from there, you get that same drill down capability here as well. So the system is smart enough to know what the source was of that document that was created. And we'll drill back into that source to display the details here. And incidentally, I can reprint these documents. I can save them to a PDF. I can do whatever I need to do. Now, we do ship with a standard layout like this. And of course, that's going to be your logo and your contact details will be on here where appropriate. This is the standard layout we ship with, no charge for that. It just ships with the product. If you need to make some changes, we can replicate your layout here if that's what you want us to do. There is a cost to do that. It's about $1,500 per document. Now it depends on the complexity, of course. We'll need to have a look at it and find out, where's the data coming from? How complex is it for us to recreate that? But keep that in the back of your mind. It is possible to do. Honestly, most folks are happy with the layout that we provide, so there's really nothing necessary to do there. The pay account function is probably what most folks are getting the portal for, is so that they can accept these online payments. Now, we did talk about storing credit cards, or in fact, it's card tokens. Now, you saw how we popped out to the payment processor's gateway before. That's where they're actually taking the card details, and they simply pass back to us this token. And we can store that token either on the portal itself, or if you're using one of the integrated payment processors to Sage 300, and there's 4 of them that I'm aware of right now, you can store those card details within Sage 300, which means you can use them inside Sage 300, and customers can also use them on the portal. And when they store a card through the portal, we will save it into Sage 300, assuming you're using one of those integrated processors. And we've got this one set as a default card. So when they want to make a payment, they don't have to enter the card details all the time. They can just say, use that one and go ahead and pay it. We do provide a delete function. Now, this is really just for the customer because we don't actually ever delete the card. We'll mark it as inactive because at some point you may have transactions still pending on this, or you may need to defend a transaction at some point in the future. So we just keep them there. We mark them as inactive and don't show them again, but they're always available in the back end if you ever need to do something with it later. Now, to pay the account, they can pay multiples at one time. They can pick and choose which ones they want to pay. They want to pay that one, that one, that one. They want to drill in and see what's on that document before they pay it. All this stuff is available to them. And when they hit that make payment button, excuse me, they've got that stored card. If I hit make payment now, the only thing I see next is a receipt. And that receipt's going to show up on screen. It's going to send an email to the customer with that receipt as well. And it's going to send an email to the internal team, to your side, to your AR department that says so-and-so made this payment. Here's the details. Also, what we can do is we can integrate to Microsoft Teams and send an instant message to a team that's set up to deal with AR payments, or we can send a Slack message to the same sort of Slack channel that's set up to accept these. And those are instantaneous. So when somebody makes that payment, you will instantaneously get a message to that team or that channel that says, here's the payment that was made by this customer for this much money for these invoices. And so you'll get that instant notification. And what happens again when they make that payment is we will go, once we get the post back from the payment gateway, we will append it directly into a Sage AR receipt batch that's there specifically for card processing, so that when you get your bank statement, you will have some means to reconcile those transactions. So that's the payment side of things. Oh, something else is a prepayment. So kind of cool. We have the ability to take prepayments against either an account, just as unallocated cash against an account, on an order, which we will apply right to that order. You can see it on the order itself, or to a quote. So this allows you to take these advance payments from customers, and maybe you take deposits on projects or something like that, which would just be unallocated cash. Or you might want to take a prepayment on a custom order, something like that. So we can do so in this process. If you're using order entry, then of course you can the customer can look at all their open orders. And there's a bunch of stuff that's going on this page that warrants some explanation. We support all the order types within Sage 300, including quotes. And we're making some interesting use of quotes in this situation here. So a few things that can happen here. You can allow a customer to place a quote online through this order entry form, which I'll show you in a minute. So it's really more like a request for a quote. And the process might be something like this. So the customer submits that quote. Somebody internally reviews that quote. So when it first comes in, it might come in awaiting for approval, like this guy on top here. When somebody reviews it, it might then take on the status of approved. And once the customer has a look at that, they say, okay, so they can either just pop on that and open it up, or they can look at the document itself by drilling into it. They say, yep, like what I see. They now have the option of turning that quote into an active order. And once these orders go into Sage, incidentally, you can put them in on hold, or you can put them in ready for fulfillment. That's up to you. And that's another option that you have to set. So that's kind of an interesting thing that you can do for quotes. Another way you might do it is maybe your internal staff creates quotes for customers and then just makes them available for them to look at online, in which case they could do the same thing. I think that's everything I needed to talk about there. And if something's been invoiced, you can actually see, excuse me, the invoice document that was applied to it. You can have a tracking number. If you posted a tracking number within Sage, we will post that here as well. If there have been multiple shipments, we'll show all those shipments. And of course, you can drill down into that document as well, if you'd like to. So that's the view order side of things. The order entry is, missed that. The order entry is really, it's an online order entry form that your B2B customers, your wholesale customers can use. Now, we say it's not a full e-commerce type thing because really there's no way to navigate around and look at additional information and that kind of thing. They have to have some familiarity with your product line to do this. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So first of all, we're reading all of this straight out of Sage. So these are all the ship to locations that we have, or you have on file for that customer, or they can enter a new one. They can enter a PO number here if they like. They can request the delivery date. You can choose to expose this or not. Normally that's an internal thing, but we did get some requests for somebody to expose that to the customer, so we did. And of course, entering comments and such. When they're looking for items, the way this works is they have to type in a few characters of either the the item description, the item number, any of the information that lives in the 4 additional item information fields in inventory control, or it could even be the customer item number if you happen to be maintaining that against your own item numbers in Sage. So they type in, and remember, we've got no data here, so we have to trigger this in some way, shape, or form, either by hitting the enter key or this finder. And then what we're doing now is we're going out to Sage and bringing back everything that satisfied that request. And so the first thing we get is, let's have a look at that. This is just line by line. I'm just entering quantities. Option does exist to override that if you like. Typically that would be reserved for a salesperson login, which is one option that we have. Or we had an instance where a nonprofit wanted to take donations this way, so they wanted to leave that open so somebody could fill in whatever amount they wanted. It's available there should that be applicable to your situation. So that's the quick, just line by line, quick order entry kind of a thing. Another way we can do this, and we're getting a little bit closer to what e-commerce solution might be, is we can display, and I think it's that guy, we can display those 4 additional line item detail fields within Sage 300 to give them a bit more description about what's going on. So let's say we want 2 of those guys. And then finally, the last, whoops, I guess I didn't enter that. The last thing is we can actually display images. I think that guy has some images. So let's have a look. No, wrong one. Let's find one with some images. Perhaps that guy. There we go. And you can have multiple images here as well if you'd like, and then you'd just be able to scroll through that. And we can either store these on the portal itself or in some directory or file location that we can have access to from our website here. So pretty straightforward to do. And that's the order entry side. And I mentioned that you could either have them place an order or place a quote. This, again, you control. You can turn these on or off. You can have one or both. Up to you how you want to do that. So that's the order entry side of things. Oh, and incidentally, which I haven't mentioned yet, is all of these things are, these screens are all designed to be responsive. So it doesn't matter what device I'm using. Any of these screens is viewable from a cell phone. The menu has changed now to this drop-down menu. So it doesn't matter what device I'm using, I am going to get an experience that is appropriate for the screen size that I have. So that's the customer portal. Sorry, that's the customer facing side of the customer portal. Now let me show you the back end. And Angela, hopefully we're monitoring for questions here, and if you feel it's appropriate to interrupt me, please do. Otherwise, we can field them all at the end.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to log in as the administrator, and this is you logging into the back end of your own portal so you can see what's going on there should you ever need to do so. And you'll do so initially to get it set up, but after that, it's not really necessary to log in here again unless you really want to. So you're given us something quite different from a display perspective. So first thing you're going to see is this dashboard. It tells you, all right, how many receipts have I accepted today, month to date, year to date, last year, either by the total or by the dollar amount. Okay, so it gives you some indication of how active your portal is. In fact, you can even do it by user or by customer. So you can have multiple users for any one AR customer. And this tells you how many people are actually using it. This guy down here is for the payments that have been received and then inserted into Sage. And in the Sage 300 world, that should always be 0. If it's not 0, it means that we had an issue trying to insert that payment into a receipt batch. Something went wrong in the process and whatever. So we're going to alert you to that here. And then you can just click that process button and we will insert them again if they didn't get inserted. This is where you control all your users. Oh, remember we spoke about that broadcast message in the beginning. This is where you control that. And you can reset it and set a start and end date and all that. So it's pretty straightforward. This is where all the users are controlled. And if you're going to set up all your users, you'll do so through here. And there's the standard, the customer, what I just went through with you. There's the merchant, which is what we're looking at now. And then there's a salesperson, which is really just an internal sales staff. And the only difference between that and the customer view is that they will get asked the question, what customer do you want to work with? And once they enter the customer details, they'll get presented with the same view as that customer saw that we just went through. But if you ever need to turn somebody on or off in here, you can do so. And you can also search by customers by all of these different criteria here. The receipts part is probably one of the more important things in here because it tracks every payment that was made or attempted to be made. So this is the one that I didn't complete, and you can see all the details of it, right? I started the process, but I didn't finish it. It's going to track that, and you're going to know. And so everything, and this little flag here says it's been inserted into Sage. So all of these things here are telling you what's happened with those payments. It gives you the authorization numbers and all the relevant information about that payment. So if a customer ever queries, you know, I made a payment, I don't see it, what's happened, you can always find them in here by all this search criteria. So any payments that have been ever attempted to be made or made is tracked here. So you will never lose sight of any of it. And the portal settings, this is where you're going to set up all of that stuff I kind of was alluding to as I was talking about the various functions. So first of all, you can turn your portal on and off right here. This flag, there's a flag on the AR customer inside of Sage that says allow on web or not, and you can control which customers may have access with that flag if you like. This is where that self-registration component comes in. So here's the questions that we will ask that they would need to know about their account in order to be granted automatic approval. And that's what that flag is set for. And this is where you just change that image file. And again, it's just navigate to the new image file you want and plop it in there and you're done. Your default language, your address, your welcome message, all that stuff is controlled right here. Easy to change. This is where you will control all of the standard functions. So you remember I said, depending upon what you subscribe to will determine which icons show up, but you also have control over them here. And it's really just a matter of turning these things on and off if you want them or not. And what I select here can impact what shows up down here later on as well. You know, what type of prepayments do you want to take? Orders, quotes, or both? So any of those is possible. Where do you want to store your card tokens or card IDs? If you're using an integrated solution, a payment solution that is, you can store them on Sage Exchange. Otherwise, we can store them on the portal. And this is where you control all the document types that you want to display for the customer. So if you don't want to show interest, for instance, you just turn that off and it's not going to show up for them. As far as the domain name goes, you will want to use a subdomain of your current domain. So something like portal.mydomain.com or customers.mydomain.com, something like that. you don't want your customers looking up here and seeing a domain that, whoops, pardon me, a domain that looks like this, right? You want it to be your domain. So they know they're on your site and they haven't gone off to some phishing site or something like that, right? Simple to do. And we instruct you how to go ahead and change all of this stuff and make sure that everything gets pointed in the right places. As far as the payment processing is concerned, we support several payment processors. We'll talk about that in a second, but you have the ability to control at a customer level who can pay which invoices online, what amounts can be paid online, and by what payment methods. And I never talked about this, but we can charge a surcharge or a convenience fee, however you want to refer to that, for somebody paying by, let's say, credit card online, because you do have transaction processing fees when you take credit card payments. Where it's legal, you could pass that on to the customer. And we do so through through a distribution code inside of Sage, so it gets posted appropriately into the general ledger as a surcharge on that payment. And you can determine that, and we determine what that amount is through an optional field inside of Sage 300. There is an option to provide partial payments, not always recommended. That can cause some reconciliation issues. And you can determine if there's a maximum payment amount that you will allow to be paid by credit card, and you'll set that here as well. So lots of control over who pays, how they pay, and how much they can pay, and if you charge a surcharge or not. This is where you set up all your payment processors. So here's the guys that we've integrated to date. And this grows all the time as we come across new ones that we add into here. But any of these we have already integrated to, so they're good to go. If you've got a new one, let us know who it is. We've committed to support every major payment processor. If you're using some very obscure one, there may be a cost to do that. I don't think we've come across one yet. Most of these guys make it easy for us to integrate. So it's pretty straightforward for us to do. We've got several here because we like to switch back and forth between different ones. If you're doing Canadian and US processing, you will need a merchant account for each of those, and we'll need to indicate those here. And this tells you what payment types we're prepared to take, or what your your payment processor has authorized your account to deal with. Connect setup, I won't worry about. The notifications, this is kind of cool. I talked about this a little bit. This is where we notify you internally or your customers about something that's going on. So first of all, there's a technical contact. Now, you remember I said we have this component called Connect, and Connect needs to be turned on, and typically gets installed on the same machine where your Sage 300 server is. And it just, again, sits there and waits for the portal to ask it a question, interrogate Sage, brings back the answer, and we post it back up onto the screen. If something goes wrong in that communication, we want to notify somebody, because this stuff is within your control. So if we can't communicate for some reason, we're going to fire off a message to whoever is indicated here. So this could be a distribution list internally by email. We could send it to a Slack channel that you have set up inside your company if you're using Slack, or if you're using Microsoft Teams. Here's the Microsoft team that we will need to send that notification to, and you turn them on and off here. So that's for technical stuff. We have the same thing for AR. So somebody makes a payment, a new customer signs up, or a new user signs up for a particular customer, we can send these notifications in the same way. And the same thing holds true for the order entry side of things. Somebody's placed an order, let's let the sales team know, let's let the fulfillment team know that that's happened. And again, email, Slack, or Teams, all those notifications can happen, one or all of them. The contact us, that was one of the icons on the main page. It was just a means for them to communicate with you, and this just tells you where that needs to go. And okay, so this is that switch that says you want to notify the customer that a new user has signed up to get access to their account. You can turn that on and off here. And this is where you also notify of order creation to the customer when an order is created. So that is that bit. The last one is there's lots of different settings with respect to order entry that you can control here. Your default location, what price list do you want to use, either the customer price list or the default web price list, I guess, for lack of a better word. The units of measure that you're going to allow, should the orders be placed on hold when they come in. Lots of different settings in here that you can set up that will determine how orders get posted into Sage if you're using the order entry side of things. And I think I have covered most of the topics that I wanted to cover here. Let me just pop back to my PowerPoint presentation because there are a couple of slides that we can finish up with here. Maybe before I do that, perhaps I can ask Angela, are there any questions out there right now, Angela?
Not yet.
No questions? Okay.
No.
Let's move on then. So the next thing I want to show you is how much does this thing cost? Well, it's pretty inexpensive. So there's three potential iterations, I guess. First of all, you'll start with the base portal. That's this first column here. You need that as a baseline. If you want to add online payments, here's the cost for the online payments right here. And that's all the stuff you get with it. And incidentally, this is all posted on our website, so it's public knowledge. And also, if you look at the Sage Marketplace, all our stuff is there as well. We're sold directly through Sage and through the reseller channel. And if you want to add the order entry, this is the cost of the order entry side of things. Now, you don't have to have payments to get order entry or vice versa. So you can buy one of these, two of these, all three of these. It's really up to you what you need. There's a one-time setup fee. Oops, pardon me. Let's back up. There's a one-time setup fee of $200 Canadian. That just gets your instance provisioned inside of our data center. You do, and I'm going to mention this again, require a Sage 300 user license in order for this communication to happen. So please be aware of that. And we do need access to your static IP address or your external IP address in order for this communication to happen. So this is an IP to IP communication. If that means anything to anyone, it means this machine to that machine, and that's the only thing that should accept communication. And as we go through that port in your firewall, that port is blocked as we are occupying that port. Nothing can get by that. And our communications are encrypted. So it's a very secure communication between the two systems. And with that, I will move to the last slide. Now, as I said, we are what's known as an endorsed solution, I guess, with Sage. So it's available exclusively through them for Sage 300. So the folks at Pur-Logic can acquire the customer portal on your behalf. I didn't mention this, but I will do now. This is the multi-tenant SaaS offering, which means it's the same product that every customer uses. But we have made provision in here to do what we call merchant-specific, call them modifications, and that might be a strong word. But if there are things that you haven't seen that you think you would like the portal to do on your behalf, please let us know, because it's probably possible. Because of the way this is built, we can access any data that lives inside of Sage 300. So if you didn't see it being displayed there and you would like to see it, just let us know. We'll spec it out for you and figure out what it might take to do that. But just know that we have access to any data that lives inside of Sage 300. In fact, any data in any ODBC compliant data source. So if you've got data somewhere that you think your customers would benefit from by having it displayed on the portal, very good likelihood that we can do that. With that, I will ask again if there are any questions.
There is one question, Peter.
Okay.
Can the portal be branded with the company's logo?
Yes, it can. Let me just go back here and show that to you. So this bit up here, that's going to be your logo, and you change that right here. You just navigate to a new file, you put your logo up there. So that's going to be your branding there. And then also when I get, let me go back to the customer side of things. When you look at that login page, this will be your address. And of course, this is all your messaging here as well. So that's you, and that's you. So it's going to be your branding to that extent. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I think that was the only question.
Well, I mean, we always throw this offer out there. If there is something very specifically you'd like to see or discuss with us, I mean, get in touch with the folks at Pur-Logic. We're happy to have those conversations. Like I say, just about anything is possible. So it's just a matter of what's it going to take to do that. So feel free to throw something crazy at us. We'll see if we can satisfy it for you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Peter.
My pleasure.
And once
Thank you,
again, this
Peter.
webinar has been recorded and will be sent out to all registrants.
Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate the time. And if we can be of service, please let us know.